That's right here. And then we got two other guys. Good. Did you come from a musical family?
Yeah, my dad was a drummer.
Okay.
I'm originally from New Orleans.
All right.
My dad was a drummer, mom was a singer, and kind of had a family band. I had an older brother that was a guitar player.
Wow.
My younger brother's a drummer as well. And so it kind of, it made sense. I don't know which came first. It was like, okay, there's a guitar player, drummer, we need a bass player in the family band, or if I gravitated. I remember gravitating towards the sound of the bass and hearing, the bass in songs and stuff and things, and really kind of like hearing like, oh man, that one thing that just like, and years later knowing that it was the bass that was making that sound that I was so, just enamored with. I kind of had I still do, kind of have like a schizophrenic taste in music, So I grew up listening to, I was kind of a metalhead when I was a teenager. I listened to like Judas Priest and Black Sabbath and Iron Maiden and all that stuff. But then coming from New Orleans, I'd hear stuff like the Meters and the Neville Brothers, Dr. John. And then my dad, being a drummer, was into, everything drummer. Of course, Buddy Rich, and he really loved Bobby Colomby from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So that Blood, Sweat, and Tears was a big influence on me. I mean, it's Jim Fielder. I remember hearing his like bass solo on that one album where
the big one.
The Blues Part 2 or whatever. And it's just like, it's just like a bass solo in like D Dorian. It doesn't go anywhere. But it's such a cool hip, like solo. It's just like, he just takes it on another level.
We had Ron McClure in here. He followed.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how Jim really helped put Fender bass, the electric bass, on the map. With that.
I started playing guitar a little bit when I was 12 or 13, and then by I guess 14 or 15 years old, I was just like bass. That's my thing. That's what I want to do.
And who were your early bass role models?
Oh my God. Well, like I said, kind of like schizophrenic with music taste, but George Porter Jr. from the Meters, Jim Fielder from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I can't remember his name, but the guy from Santana.
David Brown.
David Brown, from the Braxis, the guy from War, all the heavy metal guys and, everything in between. I didn't start playing upright until I went to college in my 20s.
Did you study music formally there?
Yeah, I studied music. I went to a community college called Delgado Community College in New Orleans, and at the time, I didn't know how to read music, and I knew I wanted to play upright. I wanted to play jazz, and I just wanted to walk bass line. Like to me, jazz was walking bass line.
Sure.
Outside of it was before like knowing anything about fusion or anything like that, and it was. I wanted to be able to go. Didn't matter what chord or key or anything I was playing, and I just know I wanted to do that walking thing. I was like, I want to play that groove. Also, coming from the son of a drummer and having a family of drummers, I kind of think like a drummer.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like a bass player, or a drummer dressed as a bass player, if you will.
Well, drummers and bass players, of course, they have that intense relationship.
Absolutely, yeah.
We just had John Montagna started as a drummer. He became a bass player.
Yeah,
Jocko started as a drummer.
Yeah, and I play a little bit of drums. I mean, I don't play professionally or anything, but I love to sit behind a pair of, some drums and just bang the shit out of them.
When did you start working professionally?
Let's see. Well, actually, so I started going to college in my early 20s. I started to learn how to read music, and around the same time, my father had formed a big band. So he had a friend in Florida that had all these arrangements of Nestico arrangements, original like Buddy Rich big band arrangements, all this stuff. So I started learning how to play, learning how to read, and learning how to play, I basically learned how to read music playing in a big band.
Mm-hmm.
So in big band, it's like, everything's quarter notes. So I had this little system, I couldn't read fast, but my system was, as long as I played the first note of every phrase, I could kind of fake my way through it. As long as the first note of every bar, as long as I nailed that,
hit the root.
Everything else was kind of like, I could kind of fake my way through it until I, eventually learned how to read, and so I did that. And then after I did that, I left New Orleans in my mid-20s and started working on cruise ships. I did that for a few years and moved to New York, and I decided I was doing a summer stock somewhere. And I'd had a couple bass lessons with Walter Payton, the New Orleans bass player. Sure. But coming to New York, I'd realized, I went and did a summer stock once, and we were doing like carousel, and I'd had lessons and stuff, but I really wasn't, it just wasn't happening. Like my arco playing wasn't happening. So I was just kind of like, I need to go back to school. So I decided I wanted to go back to school and really learn how to play upright, learn how to play arco. So I found this school in Jersey where I live, New Jersey City University. I went back there and I studied with Andy Ulau.
Okay.
And I learned how to play the bass. I learned I really wanted to play upright. So for exclusively almost 6, 7, 8 years, I only played upright because, first of all, the school wouldn't allow anybody to play electric bass. Even if we had a Brecker Brothers combo. It was like, okay, I'm playing electric now. Can I take a lesson on electric bass? But it was fine with me because I felt like,
play skunk funk on upright?
Yeah. Wow. No. I had to play on electric, but they were just like, no, we're not giving you lessons on electric bass. Sure. But at that point, I felt like I was, at that time I was playing 6-string bass. I was just kind of like, I really want to focus on the upright bass. Like electric, you can kind of fake your way around. I could play this, I could play that, as long as you know what the notes are. But upright, it's kind of like, if it's not happening, it's not happening. Especially with a bow. I mean, if you're playing arco, it's like it's like truth serum. It's like you're playing something with a bow, and it's like if that note isn't right there, you know it. Playing pits, you can kind of get away with bending the notes and doing all this stuff. But so I really wanted to get good at playing upright, and I finished my bachelor's there, and I was taking grad level courses at the time, so it made sense to keep going for my master's. So I went for my master's, got almost to the end, and then I kind of got burnt out, and then at the same time I started going on the road with some Broadway shows, some musical theater. And then I've kind of found my way into the musical theater realm. Well, if you say musical theater, you could mean that you're playing a show like Carousel, The Producers, or you could mean Rock of Ages or Lion King, So it's a full spectrum of, okay, it's electric, could be upright, it could be traditional boom chick where you're playing 1 and 3, or it could be something like Book of Mormon, I don't know if you guys have seen that show, but I was on tour with that show for a year and a half, and the amount of style that you play in that one show, you wouldn't think, but there's like classical upright, there's some funky electric stuff, there's this cool fretless African stuff in the show, and then there's one scene in the show where the Mormons go to hell, and you're playing like this heavy metal riff with a pick.
Yeah.
So it's like all this music in this one show.
You talk about 6-string, 5-string bass. Maybe it's a generational thing, but I know there's a lot of traditional bass players get very upset when they see an extra string or two on it.
Well, I also play 4-string too. I actually love the 4-string bass. I mean, I have nothing against it. I do like this particular bass that I got a couple of years ago.
Great. That's
because
the best 5-string, I think.
It's just it's everything you need, and it's okay. I could play 4-string on here without going to this string. I don't need to play this string, but if I need it, it's there. I can go down to a low C.
Right.
Is
the bottom an E flat or D flat?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's a very well-rounded bass, and it's a Fender bass. Maybe people don't realize that. If I show up and it's like, oh no, we meant Fender bass. Well, you know who made this bass?
Finally, let's talk. What are your future aspirations? What do you want to do with the rest of your career?
Oh man, I just want to keep gigging. I want to not have to do a regular gig. It's like I love playing all kinds of music. Like I said, I'm kind of schizophrenic. I mean, I have my favorites, but these days, I just got off the road with a band that at the last minute they needed a bass player replacement. Went on a week tour. Came back home and, with this cough, of course, brought that home with me. Girlfriend was happy about that. And I sub on Broadway shows, and I really love the challenges of doing that, because it's like, when you're playing Broadway, you're you're reading music, but it's not just that you have to play the notes, you have to sound like the guy you're subbing for. So whether it's
Take on the character.
Mike Viseglia or Paul Adame, or, like I just got a text that the girl from Donna Summer wants me to come and sub at 7 o'clock tonight. So I was just like, great, I'm there. I'm like the guy the 11th hour guy that, or I'm like the 8th, 9th, 10th guy that somebody calls. I'm not the first call guy, but if somebody gets around to me and calls me, that means something's gone terribly wrong and nobody else is available. Yeah. So they call me and I'm like, yeah, I'll do it.
I'm Mariano Rivera.
Yeah. So, and I love that. I don't care as long as it keeps me busy and pays the bills, man. I love, I just love playing music. And a couple of years ago, I kind of made, a decision. It was just like, I'm not really a desk guy. I don't really know computers, and it's like I don't really do anything else good enough to make money at it or make a living at it. And so this is kind of my plan A, B, and C. So I'm kind of screwed in a way, like it's like music is kind of, the industry like we're talking about is just kind of like it's changing, it's always evolving. So you're trying to sound like you're just trying to accommodate everybody. It's like if somebody wants the P-bass sound, it's like, well, I guess I got to go get a P-bass somewhere, and that's what they want, So I'm just trying to accommodate people, that hire me for something, and just trying to make people happy, and hire me again or get my name around that, that people wanted to do me.
You can catch additional episodes and much more by visiting us on the web at knowyourbassplayer.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you next time here on Know Your Bass Player.